Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm your host, and I'm super excited to have you join us today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Alright, let's dive right in. Today, we're kicking things off with CRISC Domain 4, one of the key areas in the Certified in Risk and Information Systems Control certification. For those of you prepping for the exam, or just curious about risk management, this is going to be a fun ride. Specifically, we're going to unpack the IAAA model and multi-factor authentication to critical concepts that tie directly into how we secure systems and manage risks effectively. So, whether you're an IT pro, a student, or just a tech enthusiast, stick around because this is going to get interesting. Alright, here's what we've got lined up for you in this video. 9 awesome points we're going to unpack together. We're diving deep into CRISC Domain 4, and trust me, it's packed with stuff you'll want to know. Here's the rundown. Introduction to Multifactor Authentication, MFA. We'll kick things off by exploring what MFA is and why it's a game changer for security. Common MFA implementations. Think passwords, apps, and maybe even your fingerprint. We'll check out the coolest ways it's done. Introduction to Authorization. Next, we'll switch gears and talk about who gets access to what and why that matters. Principle of least privilege. Ever heard the phrase, less is more? We'll see how it applies to keeping systems locked down. Isolation in Authorization. We're going to get into how to keep things separate and secure, like rooms in a high-tech vault. Importance of isolation. Why does it matter? Spoiler. It's all about stopping trouble before it spreads. Accountability. Who's doing what? We'll dig into tracking actions and why it's a big deal. Protecting audit logs. These are like the security cameras of IT. We'll talk about keeping them safe and sound. Conclusion. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with some key takeaways you can actually use. By the end of this, you'll be ready to tackle these concepts like a pro, whether it's for the CRISC exam or just impressing your tech-savvy friends. Ready to jump in? Let's start with the good stuff. Okay, first up, Multifactor Authentication, or MFA for short. Let's dive into Multifactor Authentication, or MFA, and why it's such a big deal. Here's the thing. Back in the day, a single factor, like just a password, might have been enough to keep your stuff safe. But today, not a chance. Modern systems are under attack from all angles, and a lone password is like leaving your front door unlocked in a storm. That's where MFA comes in. It's like adding a deadbolt, a security camera, and a guard dog all at once. So, what is it? MFA combines more than one type of authentication to make sure it's really you trying to get in. We're talking about mixing things up. Maybe a password plus a smart card you swipe, or a fingerprint teamed up with a code your smartphone spits out. It could even be a mashup of all these factors. The point is, by stacking these layers, organizations create a fortress around their systems that's crazy tough to crack. Think of it like a superhero team-up. Each factor brings its own strength, and together, they're unstoppable. Okay, now that we've got the basics of MFA down, let's talk about how it actually shows up in the wild. These are the common ways organizations roll it out. Some you've probably used yourself. Point 1. Traditional password and smartphone code. First up, the classic combo. A password paired with a smartphone code. You know the drill. You type in your password, and then bam, a code pops up on your phone, either texted to you or generated by an app like Google Authenticator. It's super common because it's pretty straightforward. Something you know, the password, plus something you have, your phone. It's like a secret handshake with an extra step. Point 2. Convenience versus control. But here's the catch. It's convenient, right? You've always got your phone on you. The downside? That phone's not under your company's control. Your IT department can't exactly babysit your device 24/7. So, while it's easy to use, it hands over a bit of the security reins to you, and, well, not everyone's a security ninja. Point 3. Device risks. And let's be real, Smartphones are awesome, but they're also little chaos magnets. They get lost in the couch cushions, stolen at coffee shops, or dropped in puddles way too often. If your phone's gone, so's your access. And that can be a headache for authentication. It's a trade-off. Super handy until it's not. So, this setup's a heavy hitter in the MFA world, but it's not perfect. Stick around, because we've got more implementations coming up. And trust me, they get even more interesting. Alright, now, we've just locked down who you are with MFA. Now it's time to figure out what you're allowed to do. That's where authorization steps in. Picture this, you've authenticated, you're in the system. And it's like you've just walked through the front door of a super secure club. But here's the kicker. Just because you're inside doesn't mean you get the run of the place. Authorization is all about setting the rules for what you can touch. It's the system saying, okay, you're cool, but here's your VIP pass, and it's got limits. We're talking privileges and permissions. Stuff like read-only access, you can look but don't touch. Write only, drop your notes and go, or the full combo of read-write. Then there's the big guns. Create, update, delete, or even total control over the data. Think of it like a video game. Some players get basic moves, while others unlock the cheat codes. So, after authentication proves it's you, authorization decides what you can do. It's the bouncer at the door handing out the right keys. And trust me, those keys matter. Let's see how this plays out next. Moving next, let's talk about one of the golden rules of security, the principle of least privilege. Sounds fancy, right? But it's actually pretty simple and super smart. Here's the deal. Imagine you're handing out keys to your employees. Do you give everyone the master key to the entire building? Nope. You give them just the key to the room they need to do their job. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what this principle is all about. Making sure people only get the exact level of access they need to get their work done. No extra privileges, no VIP passes to places they don't belong. For example, maybe Sarah in accounting can view payroll files but can't edit them, while Tim in IT can tweak system settings but not mess with HR folders. Permissions can even get super specific, locked down to a single file or folder, so security stays tight. It's like putting every piece of data in its own little safe and only handing out the combos that absolutely need to be shared. Alright, we've locked down privileges with least privilege. Now let's talk about keeping things even tighter with isolation in authorization. This is all about putting extra guardrails around access, so it's not just who and what, but also when and where. Let's break it down. Point 1. Fixed duration. First up, authorizations aren't forever. They've got an expiration date. Think of it like a movie ticket. It's good for one show, not a lifetime pass. Access gets granted for a set time, and when that clock runs out, boom, timeout. It's a built-in way to keep things fresh and force a recheck, so no one's sneaking around longer than they should. Point 2. Time-based access control. Next, we've got time-based rules. Ever try logging into your work system at 3 a.m. just for fun? Probably not. And the system might not let you. Access can be set to kick in only during normal working hours or specific times you're supposed to be on the clock. It's like the system saying, hey, it's not your shift, go back to bed. This keeps things locked down when they don't need to be wide open. Point 3. Location-based access control. And then there's the where factor, location-based controls. Imagine you're logging in from, say, your office in New York, but suddenly the system sees a request from halfway across the world. Red flag. Requests from weird or unlikely spots might get hit with extra verification, like a prove it's you challenge, or just blocked outright. It's like a bouncer at the door going, wait, you don't look like you belong here. So, isolation in authorization adds these layers, time limits, schedules, and geographic checkpoints to keep access as tight as a drum. Pretty cool, right? Let's see why this matters next. Okay, so we've got isolation locking things down by time and place. But why does it matter? Buckle up, Because this is where it gets really good. Isolation isn't just a fancy trick, it's a security superpower. Here's the deal. By setting those time limits or location rules we just talked about, you're stopping users from messing with their account privileges when they don't need to. Think of it like this. If you only get the keys to the office during your shift, you can't sneak in at midnight to throw a party. This does something awesome. It shrinks the window of opportunity for trouble. Whether it's an employee gone rogue or a hacker who snagged some credentials, isolation slams the brakes on how much damage they can do. And here's the kicker. It makes life easier for the security team too. With a smaller scope to watch, just the right times and places, they can zero in like a laser instead of chasing shadows everywhere. It's like turning a giant messy spotlight into a tight, controlled beam. So, isolation doesn't just add walls, it maximizes how effective your control really is. Pretty clutch, right? Let's keep this train rolling. Alright, we're at the final piece of the IAAA puzzle, accountability. This is where the rubber meets the road, and it's all about keeping score. So, you've identified who's who, authenticated them, and authorized what they can do now. Accountability steps in to say, hey, let's track what they're actually doing. How? Through auditing. Picture this, every move you make in the system gets logged, like a digital detective jotting down notes in a case file. And those notes? They point right back to your user ID, so there's no hiding. But here's what makes it work. First, every user needs their own unique ID, no sharing allowed, or it's chaos. Second, that authentication we talked about, it's got to be rock solid, so we know it's really you behind that ID. And third, those logs, the system's memory, have to be locked down tight, safe from anyone trying to sneak in and rewrite the story. Think of it like a security camera. It's only useful if the footage is clear, tied to the right person, and tamper-proof. When all that's in place, accountability becomes your ace in the hole, showing who did what, when, and why. It's the final layer that ties the IAA model together. Pretty slick, huh? Let's see how we protect those logs next. Okay, we've got our audit logs tracking everything like a digital detective. But here's the million-dollar question. How do we keep them safe? These logs are gold. They're the proof of who did what. So we can't let just anyone mess with them. That's where protecting audit logs comes in, and it's got two big rules to follow. First up, these logs need to be immutable. That's a fancy way of saying set in stone. Once something's written in there, it's locked, no edits, no deletes, no sneaky cover-ups. Not even the operations staff or the big shot administrators should be able to tweak them. Think of it like carving something into a steel plate. Once it's done, good luck changing it. This keeps the truth intact, no matter who's got their hands on the keyboard. Second, these logs can hold some juicy stuff. Sensitive data like who accessed what and when. So, we can't let everyone peek at them either. View access has to be locked down tight, like a top-secret file in a spy movie. Only the right people with the right clearance get to see inside. This way, the info stays safe from prying eyes and doesn't end up in the wrong hands. When you nail these two, immutability and strict access, your audit logs become a fortress of trust. Pretty critical stuff, right? Let's wrap this all up next. Alright, everyone, we've made it to the finish line. Let's tie it all together. The IAAA model, identification, authentication, authorization, and accountability is like the ultimate playbook for securing information systems. It's got everything you need to lock things down tight. We kicked off with multifactor authentication, stacking up those layers like a security sandwich to make breaches way harder. Then, we dove into authorization, setting the right privileges with least privilege and isolation to keep access in check. And finally, accountability, with those tamper-proof audit logs, ensures we've got eyes on every move. When you put it all together, strong MFA, smart authorization, isolation, and solid monitoring, you've got a rock-solid system that's ready for anything. Whether you're studying for CRISC or just leveling up your security game, this stuff is gold. So, what's next? Drop a comment below. Tell me which part you liked best or what you want to see next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you're in on all the action. Thanks for hanging out with me today. You're awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.